Of this short story, they've just had a new animal arrive, and he isn't adjusting very well to captivity. So Kaylee's hands trembled as she re-entered the beast hold, a bit scared that something would have gone wrong with her beast. A glance showed no change. She tried to ignore the Kogan as she cared for the rest of her charges, moving back and forth between the food storage and each pen. She could tell the other beast tamers had been in to feed their own charges while she was out. Once again, it looked like they'd done the least amount of work possible. None of them cared about the creatures like she did. They'd be back later today to train, but only if the Beastmaster made them. On the whole, they were a lazy bunch. She fully expected at least one of them, to get killed by their creatures soon. It was a callous thought, but a lot of the animals they worked with had been born wild. Putting them in a cage didn't make them easier to work with, a concept the boys didn't seem to understand. In contrast, there was never any concern that her charges would attack her. Kaylee had a way with the beasts. The circus in the sky had one of the best varieties of exotic animals, and she'd come to know them all well. Not just her own charges, though. She just couldn't not help the other creatures. They were the dogs from the home world, tiny little creatures that danced on their hind legs and yipped with joy when they saw her approach. She checked over the female. Kaylee suspected the little creature was pregnant again. She told its handler, Kiefer, that it was a bad idea to leave the male in the same cage, but he'd laughed her off. The Beastmaster would be mad when the female stopped performing to have her litter. Some of the cages had become elaborate habitats, like the one for the rock hawk from Ciramore, and she had screwed special dense foam into the walls and then shaped and painted it to make it look like a mountainside. The beast of prey had been bored nearly all the time, plucking at his own feathers until the bald spots had appeared. Kaylee had convinced the ringmaster to set live traps for rodents and pests. The fierce bird now hunted its dinner to its heart's delight with an artificial environment. When Kaylee looked around, she could see her touch on almost every cage. She transformed them into little habitats for the creatures. There was the python-like snake with the amazing patterns on its scales, sunning on its rock under the heat lamp. It got live prey too. Her book said that it would just keep on growing as long as it had heat and food. The bigger the snake, the bigger the draw. The Beastmaster had been happy about that too of it. Kaylee had been worried they would run out of rats at first, but then realized every spaceport they docked at reinfested the ship. Over in the next pen, the Franta monkeys skittered around on their artificial tree, playing with the little toys she'd tied to its branches. They could be a noisy bunch, rambunctious, but with proper rewards, very tractable. She didn't understand why Sullivan had run into so much trouble with them. She figured he'd tried force and never thought to appeal to their inquisitive natures. Finally, when she could avoid it no longer, Kaylee returned to the Kogan. The food had been picked over, but she couldn't tell what it might have eaten. The Kogan was now sitting in the far corner of its bare enclosure, its face almost pressed against the back wall. "Help me out here, Kogan," she said, exasperated. "My boss doesn't listen to excuses. He expects me to just magically discover how to care for you." The Kogan turned to look at her, its long paws dragging on the floor as it twisted its hips. She couldn't get over the look of desolation in its little eyes. She racked her brain for something, anything she could do to make the creature more comfortable. Then her mind settled on her strange dream from the night before, that wide-open plain. "Was that you?" she asked, not really believing it. "Was that your home?" The beast crooned softly. Kaylee's fingers tapped against the glass for a moment while she thought. "Okay, Mr. Kogan, I got it. I'll be right back." She thought back to that dream of the night before, sure that the Kogan had somehow, just like the berries, shown it to her. It seemed strange, but then again, her giant insect used prisms embedded in its chitinous shell to make rainbows. Her book said it used electromagnetic spectrum as a form of communication. Telepathy wasn't much stranger than that. She didn't wait to see if their creature responded. She just took off running across the ship. People yelled as she dashed by them in the narrow hallways, scrambling up and down the cramped shafts, the strange passages that helped bypass the big top that filled so much of the ship. She worked her way deeper and lower into the ship until she was underneath both the big top and the staging room below it. Kaylee was winded when she reached her destination. She paused, her hand resting against the grimy wall. While the ship overall wasn't gleaming, one could see the neglect in this section more than any other. Few people bothered to tread all the way down here. Besides, none of the crew would bother to clean areas the ship visitors would never see. It wasn't that circus folk were lazy. It was just that their public image was the only thing that mattered. Kaylee had realized the analog between the maintenance of the ship and the psychology of the crew a long time ago. A door opened, light spilling out to the narrow, poorly lit hallway and breaking her reverie. A dumpy-looking old woman waved to her from the doorway. Kaylee, honey, I wasn't expecting you till next week. The vegetables aren't ready yet.